In the Cedar Rapids Gazette on May 1st, there was an editorial from two survivors of sexual abuse, and they're advocating for eliminating the statute of limitations for civil claims in Iowa. I'd like to read that, please. The game of tag is one of the most classic outdoor childhood games. Although it has many versions, traditionally speaking, one player is it and must tag the other players to eliminate them. Generally, players cannot be tagged out if they are on safe base. Kids often complain and holler that safe base is unfair. They have a point. There is a safe base in Iowa, but it is a dangerous one. You see, Iowa law creates a safe zone for the absolute worst, sexual predators. A sexual predator may be out and held accountable in one jurisdiction but cross the state line into Iowa and they are safe. Why? Because Iowa has one of the worst civil statutes of limitations for child sexual abuse. If your child or grandchild is sexually assaulted, they have until their 19th birthday to file a civil suit. Yep, you read that right, 19, still a teenager, and likely still suffering in silence. The protection of Iowa's archaic civil statute of limitations is good news for child sexual predators and other bad actors. It is especially concerning given that the evidence-based research on trauma is clear. Perpetrators silence their young victims with fear, shame, threats, secrecy, and sometimes for a lifetime. Many Iowa lawmakers will say that we eliminated our criminal statute of limitations last year. That is true, but it's only half of the truth. The evidence is clear that the criminal system can only go so far in protecting children. Fewer than 20% of these cases are ever referred for prosecution, and only half of those result in a conviction. The criminal system is restrained by overworked prosecutors, limited financial resources, and the highest burden of proof and limited discovery. These limitations keep children in harm's way while predators roam the streets without worry of ever being tagged out of play. Some will continue their sky is falling alarmist arguments about due process, faded memories, and court flooding. First, due process is not an absolute right. The goal of exposing hidden child sexual predators trumps those rights. Moreover, we have safety nets that prevent weak claims, the rules of civil procedure and rules of evidence. False claims are exceedingly rare, especially for sexual abuse claims. No one yells from the rooftops, "I was sexually assaulted as a child." Given the epidemic of child sexual abuse and limits of criminal laws, many states across the country are eliminating their statutes of limitations for civil claims. Many others are also passing revival legislation, allowing victims once barred by those arbitrary laws to bring a claim, thereby exposing hidden sexual predators and making kids safer. It is a national movement of both blue and red states. 17 jurisdictions have eliminated their civil statute of limitations for child sexual abuse, and 27 jurisdictions have passed revival legislation. Revival legislation serves three compelling public policy purposes: educating the public, exposing hidden child predators, and shifting the cost of abuse away from the victims and taxpayers and to the ones that created the harm. As survivors of child sexual abuse, both the authors of this op-ed have enormous emotional, psychological, and financial burdens of this societal problem. They know firsthand how perpetrators groom, manipulate, and silence their young victims. They know the limits of the criminal justice system and how the doors to justice feel when they're slammed closed. Senate leadership can change this insanity this year by passing Senate File 32 in a leadership bill. We're still in session, we still have time, and we certainly still have the power to change the rules that benefit sexual predators. Or we can continue to grant predators the protection of Iowa's safe base. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Woodbury, Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. Am I in order for a brief point?
You are in order.
Like my colleague, Senator Celsi, I remain concerned, too, about Iowa's worst in the nation ranking on our state's child sex abuse laws. They are harmful and dangerous. As we are thankful that Senator Wahls and Representative Confrest have agreed to a leadership bill to fix this problem, I am troubled. We have still not heard a word from Senator Witver and Senator Chapman about whether they would agree to support a leadership bill to fix the issue before we adjourn for the year. I hope they will listen today as I read a letter from an Iowan who is a survivor, and this survivor has agreed to the letter being shared. I was a victim of grooming by an Iowa educator. My teacher used his position of power to take advantage of me sexually while I was a student. It's taken me over 15 years to be ready to talk about what happened and hold him accountable for what he did to me. In the past few weeks, I've learned that I have no legal right to do this. As a citizen of the state of Iowa, I cannot press criminal charges since I've aged out. I cannot press civil charges because it's been more than 5 years since my abuse. Because I am a citizen of Iowa, I have fewer rights than the man that used his classroom as a hunting ground for sexual abuse. This has been made glaringly apparent since I have connected with another victim of the same teacher, who is also his former student. She lives in a different state and has the right to press the criminal charges. I do not. She has the right to press civil charges. I do not. I cannot speak publicly about my experience, as I could compromise her legal rights to a fair investigation if she chooses to follow that path. Because I am a resident of Iowa, I don't have the same rights as a victim living in another state. And I ask you, why? Why are we protecting the predators by keeping antiquated laws that give them power and re-victimize those who have already been hurt? If predators pay attention to state laws, they would flock to states like Iowa, where the law benefits them and not the victims. As a proud native Iowan, learning about Iowa laws surrounding sexual crimes compared to other states has made me ashamed of my state. It's made me feel embarrassed and unsafe. Iowa citizens deserve better. Our children deserve better. It often takes victims of sexual crimes years to process what has happened to them. The average age to come forward is 52 years old. 5 years, Mr. President, is not enough time. There should be no limit on the time a victim is given to come forward. The mental, emotional, physical efforts of abuse last a lifetime, not 5 years. I'm almost 20 years out from my abuse, and it still affects me to this day. There is no statute of limitations on trauma, and there shouldn't be a statute of limitations on Iowa citizens' right to hold abusers legally accountable for their actions. I ask you to please enact Senate File 32 into law this legislative session, and let's give victims back their voice by giving them the right to seek civil court cases. Give Iowa victims the same rights as other U.S. citizens. Enact Senate File 32. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Senator from Wayne, Senator Sinclair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Am I in order for a personal point?
You are in order.
Thank you so much. You know, I'm not historically known for standing up and bloviating at the end of the day. I'm ready to go home usually, and today is no different. My mom's in the hospital, so I'm in more of a mind to get home than usual, to be honest. But You know, and I don't, I don't need a camera on me to get talking points for the campaign trail. I really don't. But when I'm sitting here listening to talk about kids not being safe in childcare and teachers sexually abusing kids, juxtaposed against a teacher appreciation and all of this, just I don't have any prepared remarks, Mr. President. But I can't just sit here and listen to this and let it go unchallenged, because all of the competing narratives that were juxtaposed, that we just heard our colleagues talk about. My colleague from Woodbury talking about the teacher sexual abuse, and my colleague from Polk talking about the safety in child care centers. It is Teacher Appreciation Week. Thank you for bringing that up. I want to express my appreciation for my kiddo's dad, who's been both their teacher, their administrator, and at home the best teacher he could possibly be. I want to thank my sister. I appreciate her so much. She's in a classroom in Knoxville today teaching third graders and working in tough issues that have come about from a couple of years of pandemic where kids were kind of left on the sidelines. I want to thank Mr. Jones, who is my kid's current social studies teacher, for encouraging him to be the salty young man that he is. And I would like to thank Mrs. Cassidy, who will not know she's being thanked today, but she was my high school speech teacher, and she knows how bad I was at speech in high school, and I hope she's proud of me today. But I got to talk a little bit about all of the conversations that were going on by my colleagues this morning, because what we're not talking about is a bigger issue. When we had the bill before us related to parental choice and parental rights in education, I had that stack of papers. I don't know if you all remember this, but I had that stack of papers. They were cases that were filed with the Board of Educational Examiners specifically for child sexual abuse and by educators in classrooms, and that was over the last 5 years. 86, was that right? I don't have my prepared remarks, so as I recall, it was 85, 86, 87 different ethics violations related to students and sexual offenses against them by educators. And just in the last month, I've got to bring it up, just in the last month in Riceville, there's a teacher that a termination, an agreement was reached that a teacher would leave the school district on allegations of sexual impropriety with 3 students. This was not the first time that this had happened. This was actually a second offense, and she had a prior deferred suspension of her license, and yet she was back in a classroom. Eagle Grove, there was a school employee charged with sexual impropriety with a student. In West Fork, a teacher charged with sexual impropriety, or maybe West Fork was just a termination in lieu of. Greene County, a teacher charged with being drunk in a classroom with kids. Mind you, I'm no longer in a classroom. I'd probably need to do that too, but let's be honest, it's not okay. It's why I'm not in a classroom. 5 Metro educators caught on camera volunteering the information that they were intentionally violating Iowa law because they could, with impunity. Mr. President, that's in the last month or 6 weeks that I was able to Google as I was sitting here listening to the commentary from the other side of the aisle, the conflicting commentary about how kids aren't safe here, but they're not safe here, but everything's okay. The conversation needs to go back to what's right for parents and their children that they're responsible for. And you know, if we want to talk about keeping kids safe and and making sure that we're doing the right things to keep them safe, then we need to make sure parents have the right to choose how their child is educated, to choose where their child is in daycare. I had a call 2 weeks ago with a parent from right here in the metro area. Her son had been in a fight, and she was calling the administrators begging for him to be able to go virtual or to open and roll away so that he wasn't going back into that same environment after a fight. And he wasn't allowed to do that. He wasn't allowed to go virtual. A mom didn't feel her son was safe, and yet she has to send him right back into that environment with no recourse. With no recourse and no way to take care of him herself. And we take that even further. It's not just that one young man. Her daughter, who is just older than her son, had also been involved in an altercation at school, and they're still seeing doctors to deal with the concussion that she received from that. I have videos that parents and community members have sent me of the fighting that's taking place at different high schools here in the metro area that goes unchecked right in the buildings. We need to talk about these things where kids aren't safe, where kids are being sexually violated and nothing happening. And yes, I appreciate teachers, but we have to be honest. We have to be totally honest about the fact that not all teachers are taking care of the needs of our kids. And not all kids are safe when they walk through the front doors of their particular building. And I challenge you all, and frankly, I'm going to stand here and challenge the House to look at what's happening and consider the needs of individual students as we move forward, and understand that not every public school is the safest or the best place for every child. Again, I thank you for indulging me on the time here, and I would just encourage my colleagues to be very, very diligent in not whitewashing the things that are happening that are harming kids. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Senator from Johnson, Senator Wahls.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to thank Senator Petersen, Senator Smith, and Senator Celsi for their work on this issue and for bringing more awareness to this. I think that we just heard from the Senator from Wayne a compelling reason that we need a leadership bill to fix this problem and make sure that the victims of child sexual abuse, whether they've been preyed upon by an adult who's in a classroom, whether they were in a scout unit, whether they were in a church, the victims of child sex abuse deserve justice regardless of when that incident occurred. So I would ask if Senator Witver would yield to a brief question.
Senator Witver, will you yield?
Yes.
You're in order.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senator Witver, I know that you had the chance to visit with some advocates for Senate File 32, and just wanted to see if you were going to be willing to introduce a leadership bill on that topic before the end of session.
Yeah, I did speak with some advocates last week on a Zoom. We had a really good conversation. I told them, in all likelihood, with as close as we are to the end of session and the bills that were alive earlier didn't get through, I told them it probably wasn't likely because I didn't want to give them a false hope. I did tell them that there's increased attention on this issue based on last year and the work that was done in here, and told them I'd keep that conversation open.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. President, justice delayed is justice denied. It's that simple. I think we heard from Senator Celsi, from Senator Smith, and from Senator Sinclair compelling reasons for this body to advance a leadership bill this year. I've spoken with Representative Confirst in the House and know that she's in conversations with House Republican leadership, and there's willingness over in the House to move on this issue this year. So it's day 13 of legislative overtime. I'm glad to hear that it sounds like the session is coming to its conclusion. But if we're going to be here, let's get this done. Thank you, Mr. President.
I recognize Senator from Polk, Senator Petersen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I almost called a point of order because insinuating that this was a campaign, this was something we were trying to do in a campaign is ridiculous. I have been bringing this issue up multiple times. I want to talk about how many times Democrats have brought this bill forward. The bill was filed January 31st of 2018. It was Senate File 2134. It was assigned to Senator Garrett, Edler, and Petersen. No subcommittee was held. It was filed February 5th, 2019, it was assigned to Senator Sinclair as chair, Senator Garrett and Petersen. No subcommittee held. It was filed January 16th. In 2020, Senate File 2034, assigned to Senator Sinclair, chair, Senator Schultz, and Senator Petersen. No subcommittee held. It was filed January 11th, 2021, Senate File 32, assigned to Senator Sinclair as chair, Senator Johnson, and Senator Petersen. No subcommittee held. So when no subcommittees are held, it makes it difficult for Iowans to come forward and tell their story and have a debate about it. So then the only way to have this issue come forward is to bring it up on the Senate floor through points of personal privilege. You know what it's like to be in the minority. You control the agenda. And when Senator Sinclair made the decision 3 years in a row not to hold a subcommittee on the civil statute of limitations, which is the worst in the nation. If you are sexually abused by a teacher, school employee, therapist, or counselor, you only have 5 years after that abuse or your deadline is over. And if you're older in school when this occurs, it's your 19th birthday. Somebody tell me if you think it is right for survivors of child sex abuse to have their justice determined, 1, by their birthday, 2, by their rapist profession, or 3, because they live in the state of Iowa and the state of Iowa's lawmakers are refusing to take up this issue. We have had multiple years to have a hearing on this, and your caucus has made a decision not to. I am asking you publicly to take this issue up. I have yelled about it on the floor multiple times. We actually have passed this and had the House hold it up in previous years as well. But you know, the Senate is our own chamber. I cannot believe that we cannot come together, Democrats and Republicans, to stand up for survivors of child sex abuse. Why they would be barred from a courtroom from trying to seek civil damages for something as simple as getting their therapy expenses paid for is ridiculous. Senator Witver, Senator Chapman, I know you care deeply about this issue. I am asking both of you to join Democratic leaders. Let's get this done. Last year's bill passed as an amendment in less than 2 weeks' time. We have shown Iowans that we can come together and get bills through both chambers and signed by the governor in less than 48 hours. I have seen it done. We have the power to protect young Iowans. Let's do this. Thank you.
Seeing no further senators seeking the floor, Chair recognizes the senator from Polk, Senator Witver.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate adjourn until Thursday, May 5th at 9 a.m.
You've all heard the motion of the senator from Polk, Senator Witver. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate will be adjourned until Thursday, May 5th at 9 a.m.